On February 12, 2031, a group of historians, curators, and administrators in Washington, D.C. were issued a challenge. Build a memorial and museum to honor those who perished in a devastating terror attack in the nation's capital. The challenge had been issued by a group of survivors and family members of those who were killed in the attack of April 19, 2030. Their goal: to build an institution that would preserve the artifacts of that day and serve as a place of healing. Our hope, said one survivor, is to deliver on Lincoln's promise, to achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves. A committee was quickly formed, and by the spring of 2031, it was decided. A museum will be built in Washington, D.C. to serve as a monument to memory and a center for learning. It will not shy away from examining the roots of terror, said one committee member, but it will also be a place of healing and introspection. The path to reconciliation had begun. The 2020s had been a restless decade for many Americans. Families moved about the country, starting new lives in new places. Coastal residents moved inland. Midwestern farmers moved east, putting down roots in Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, and Michigan. Texans debated questions of statehood and sovereignty. As they began their new lives, Americans wrestled with their competing desires to blend into their new communities and protect themselves from those they considered to be different. In 2028, former federal prosecutor and United States Senator Elise Stanton was elected the first woman president of the United States. After 8 years of living under a burgeoning autocracy, many Americans welcomed a return to democratic norms. Ushering in her era of healing, Denton promised to institute a top-to-bottom government realignment, reuniting long-separated migrant families, reopening the nation to asylum seekers, and re-examining prior appointments of certain federal judges. Working closely with her one-time political adversary, Republican Senate Majority Leader Teresa Mahoney, Denton drew criticism from both her supporters and detractors. "I welcome the criticism," Denton said. "We've learned through hard experience that the president is not a monarch. Nothing good comes from blind loyalty." The era of healing was over almost as soon as it began. On April 19, 2030, a heavily armed political protester, Michael Earl Ritter, drove from his home in suburban Washington, D.C. to the city's monumental core. Parking his car on 23rd Street, Northwest, he walked to the Lincoln Memorial, opened fire on hundreds of innocent bystanders, then deployed his suicide vest, killing 85 and wounding many more. Among the first responders were civilians, everyday heroes, who did what they could with the tools they had. Food truck vendor Ryan Hirota administered first aid and comforted the wounded. His actions that day captivated the distraught nation. Some urged Hirota to run for public office, and in 2032, the former lawyer and food truck vendor was elected to the United States Senate. President Denton's speech to the nation immediately after the attack was noted for its calming strength. Congress moved forward to do the business of the nation, and in the months that followed, speakers and storytellers lifted weary spirits with words of inspiration. Singer-songwriter Sean Harrison recorded a cover of America the Beautiful that became a comforting hymn for the nation. Civil rights activist and author Eric Patterson gave a TEDx talk about courage and resilience in the face of adversity. Across the nation, Americans began to heal, slowly but surely. Back in Washington, the museum finally secured a location. Now named the National Museum of American Reconciliation, the building would be erected on a parcel of land along 14th Street, Northwest, on the site of the old Regent Theater, a movie palace dating back to the 1920s, currently in use as a communal dance studio and art space. When the museum is completed, it will be a permanent home for the art, artifacts, and oral histories that emerged from the events of April 19, 2030. The National Museum of American Reconciliation is our nation's living memorial. It will be a monument to memory, a center for learning, and a celebration of the American spirit. Welcome to your history.